What Lilith's dark magic reveals about your true power, the Tree of Death. What if the greatest power you possess is the one you've been taught to fear the most? What if the parts of yourself labeled as dark or dangerous are actually keys to unlocking your most authentic, sovereign self? We're often handed stories about good and evil, light and shadow, neat little boxes to sort the world into. But today, we're going to break one of those boxes wide open. We're going to talk about a figure who has been cast as a demon, a seductress, a baby killer, and more recently, a feminist icon. We're talking about Lilith, and by journeying into her story, the real story, beyond the myths, we're going to uncover a hidden map. A map not to some demonic realm, but to the untamed wilderness within your own soul. A map that leads to a source of power so profound, it has been deliberately hidden, demonized, and buried for millennia. This is the story of Lilith and what her so-called dark magic reveals about the Tree of Death and your true power. Part 1. The Demon in the Garden. Deconstructing the legend. So, who do you think Lilith is? If you've spent any time in spiritual or feminist circles online, you've probably heard this version of the story. In the beginning, before Eve, there was Lilith, the first woman created by God from the same earth as Adam, making her his equal in every way. The book of Genesis itself offers a slight crack where this story can slip in. Genesis 1:27 says God created mankind in his own image, male and female he created them. But then in Genesis 2 we get a different story, where Eve is formed from Adam's rib. Some accounts hold that Lilith was that first unnamed woman from Genesis 1, but Adam, representing the new patriarchal order, couldn't accept this equality. He insisted that she lie beneath him, to be subservient in all things, especially in their intimacy. Lilith, a symbol of untamed, sovereign feminine energy, refused. She famously said, "Why must I lie beneath you? I also was made from dust, and am therefore your equal." When Adam tried to force her, Lilith, in a final act of defiance, uttered the sacred, ineffable name of God, grew wings, and flew away from the perfection of the Garden of Eden, casting herself into exile. God, angered by her disobedience, sent 3 angels, Senoi, Sansanoi, and Samanjaloth, to bring her back. They found her by the Red Sea, a region described in folklore as abounding with lascivious demons, a place of wild, chaotic energy. They demanded she return to Adam, but she refused, choosing freedom in the wilderness over subservience in paradise. As punishment, she was condemned to be the mother of demons, a creature of the night, forever an outcast. Eve was then created from Adam's rib, from him, not equal to him, to be a more compliant partner, a helpmeet rather than a whole and separate equal. It's a powerful story, isn't it? It's the story of the first feminist, the woman who chose exile over oppression, the icon of female autonomy, sexual liberation, and rebellion against unjust authority. It's a story that resonates so deeply with so many of us who have felt silenced, controlled, or asked to make ourselves smaller. And it's a story that is almost entirely a medieval invention, that's right. The story I just told you, the one that has launched 1,000 blogs and inspired countless people, doesn't come from the Bible. It doesn't come from ancient sacred texts. It comes from a satirical, anonymous, and often deeply misogynistic Jewish text from the Middle Ages, written somewhere between the 8th and 10th centuries, called the Alphabet of Ben Seth. Scholars point out that this book was likely intended as parody or comedic fiction, filled with absurd and crude stories, like why a donkey urinates in another donkey's urine to illustrate proverbs. It is not considered an authoritative source in Jewish literature whatsoever. This isn't to invalidate the power that people find in the myth. Archetypes evolve, and the modern Lilith is a potent symbol for a reason. But if we want to find the real key to her power, we have to be willing to look past the comfortable myth and into the much older, much darker, and frankly, much more terrifying truth. We have to go back, long before the Garden of Eden was ever conceived. To find the first whispers of Lilith, we have to travel to the sands of ancient Mesopotamia, to the cultures of Sumer, Akkad, and Babylon, thousands of years before Christ. Here she wasn't a rebellious wife, she was a Lilithio, a class of terrifying wind and storm demons. These weren't just spooky spirits, they were bringers of disease, death, and despair. The Lilithu were specifically female demons, often depicted as sexually wanton, who would prey on men in their sleep. They were seen as spirits of those who died without marrying or having children, filled with a desperate, dangerous longing. They were said to steal newborn infants from their cribs, a terror for any new mother. For centuries people used amulets and incantations inscribed with the names of angels to ward them off. This is the original Lilith, not a human, not a hero. a dangerous, predatory night spirit, born of chaos and shadow. Her name itself is thought to derive from the Akkadian word for spirits, or perhaps from a Proto-Semitic root meaning female night being. So how did this Mesopotamian demon find her way into the Bible? Well, barely. In the entire biblical canon, the word Lilith appears exactly once. It's in the book of Isaiah, chapter 34, verse 14, and the context is everything. Isaiah 34 isn't a creation story. It's a prophecy of total divine judgment. It's God's fury unleashed upon the nations, specifically the nation of Edom, which was a historical enemy of ancient Israel and often used as a symbol for all worldly powers that stand against the divine. The prophet describes a land so utterly destroyed, so completely given over to chaos, that it becomes uninhabitable for humans. Its streams turn to burning pitch, its dust to sulfur. The sky itself rolls up like a scroll. It becomes a wasteland of eternal desolation, and who lives there? Let's read the verse. Different translations render it differently. The King James Version says, "The screech owl shall rest there." Others say night monster or night hag. This translation likely comes from her bird-like features in some ancient depictions and her nocturnal habits, but many modern and more direct translations, like the New Revised Standard Version or the Amplified Bible, use the name directly. Wildcats shall meet with hyenas, goat demons shall call to each other. There too Lilith shall repose, and find a place to rest. Think about what this means. In the one place she is mentioned in Scripture, Lilith is listed alongside jackals, hyenas, and demons, the creatures that inhabit a world undone, a place where divine order has collapsed into ruin. She is not cast out of paradise. She is a native resident of the wasteland. Her natural habitat is the other side, the Sitra Achra, as the mystics would later call it. This desolate wilderness of Isaiah, it's not just a place on a map. In the deep traditions of Jewish mysticism, it's a place inside of us. It's the territory of the soul that we have abandoned. And to navigate it, we need a different kind of map. We need to look at the Tree of Life, and its terrifying, illuminating shadow. Part 2. The Shadow Tree, a map of the inner wilderness in the mystical tradition of Kabbalah. The universe and the soul are often mapped out on a diagram known as the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life, the ETS chain, represents the divine flow of creation. It's a map of consciousness descending from the infinite, pure unity of God into our material world. It's the path of order, holiness, wisdom, and mercy. It's the divine blueprint for reality, the structure of a soul in perfect alignment with its source. It is, in essence, the garden. But Genesis tells us there were two trees in the garden. There was the tree of life, and there was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The mystics teach that this second tree is the gateway to another reality, a shadow reality. For every sphere of light, order, and holiness on the Tree of Life, there is a corresponding shadow, a shell or a husk of energy. This is the realm of the Qliphoth. The Qliphoth, which literally means shells or husks, form what is known as the Tree of Death. This isn't evil in the way we typically think of it. The Qliphoth are the unbalanced, chaotic, and destructive forces that were left over from the process of creation. Like the shell left behind after the fruit is formed, they are the realms of impurity, illusion, and spiritual inertia. They represent existence without meaning, divine energy that has become blocked or twisted. Now, for centuries, this tree was seen as purely demonic, a path to madness and self-destruction that magicians were warned to avoid. But in modern Western esotericism, and for our purposes of spiritual growth, we can view this tree in a different light. We can see it as a profound psychological map. It is a map of the human shadow. If the Tree of Life is a map to your highest self, the Tree of Death is a map of the challenges, the traumas, and the repressed parts of your psyche that you must face to get there. It is the ultimate tool for what psychologists like Carl Jung called shadow work. Each of the 10 Qliphothic spheres represents a specific spiritual or psychological challenge. At the top, where the Tree of Life has Kether, pure unity, the Tree of Death has Daumiel, the twins of God, representing duality, conflict, and the illusion of separation from the divine. Where the Tree of Life has Gibberah, the sphere of strength and discipline. The Tree of Death has Golakab, the burning bodies, representing uncontrolled rage, cruelty, and destruction. Where the Tree of Life has Tippereth, the sphere of beauty and harmony. The Tree of Death has Togarine, representing vanity, spiritual blindness, and the false glamour of the superficial, and so on, down the tree. Each sphere is a journey into a part of ourselves we would rather ignore. Our greed, Gamchikoth, our lie, Samiel, our blind indulgence, Harab, Sarapel. This is not a path of worshipping demons, it's a courageous path of confronting our own inner demons, the hungry ghosts of our unhealed wounds and rejected traits. It's about understanding that these shells hold trapped energy, our energy, that can be reclaimed and integrated to make us whole. And this brings us back to Lilith, because she doesn't just wander this wasteland. According to the mystics, she rules a part of it. She has a throne on the tree of death. To find Lilith's domain, we have to look at the ninth sphere on the tree of life, Yesod. Yesod means the foundation. It is the sphere of the subconscious mind. It governs our dreams, our instincts, our sexual energy, our imagination. It's the engine room of the psyche, the foundation upon which our conscious reality, Malkuth, the physical world, is built. It's deeply connected to the moon and its cycles. Now, look across to the tree of death. What is the shadow of Yesod? What is the Qliphoth that represents the corruption or repression of our subconscious, our dreams, and our sexuality? It is the sphere called Gamaliel, the obscene ones. Gamaliel is the realm of repressed desires, sexual perversion, nightmares, and the parts of our subconscious that we deem too shameful or obscene to acknowledge. It's the shadow of our creative, life-giving sexual energy, twisted into something that feels dark and forbidden because it has been denied the light of our conscious awareness. And who rules this realm of the forbidden, the sexually repressed, the nightmarish subconscious? Lilith. This is the heart of her dark magic. Lilith's power, in this esoteric context, is the power to force a confrontation with Gamaliel. She is the archetype that holds the key to the locked basement of your psyche. She represents the terrifying, liberating force that says, you must look at what you have hidden. You must face the desires you have shamed. You must integrate the parts of your own nature you have labeled obscene. Her magic is the alchemy of turning repression into liberation. It's the process of descending into the personal underworld of your own subconscious, your own inner wilderness, and reclaiming the exiled parts of your soul. This isn't about black magic rituals in the traditional sense. It's about the deeply personal, and often terrifying, ritual of radical self-honesty. It's about realizing that the demons in your subconscious are just orphaned parts of you, crying out for recognition. So how do we do that? How do we take this complex, esoteric map and use it to actually find our power? Part 3, the alchemical union. Reclaiming your sovereignty. A few years ago, I went through a period where I felt completely stuck. Creatively, spiritually, emotionally, ... Just a note. I was doing all the right things, meditating, journaling, practicing gratitude, but I felt like I was just polishing the surface of a life that had no engine. I was frustrated, and in my frustration, I kept having this recurring, unsettling dream. In the dream, I was in my childhood home, but the basement door, which was always open, was now locked, and I could hear something moving around down there, something I was terrified of. Every night, I'd stand at that door, frozen with fear, and then I'd wake up. After weeks of this, I finally realized what my subconscious was screaming at me. The light work I was doing was important, but I was actively avoiding the basement. I was avoiding my shadow, my anger, which I'd been taught was unspiritual, my ambition, which I felt guilty about, my raw, messy desires, which didn't fit the neat box of the person I was trying to be. The monster in the basement was just the parts of me I had locked away. So, I started doing the work. I started journaling about my anger. I started meditating on my ambition, asking it what it wanted. I started to face the things I had labeled obscene or unacceptable within myself. It was uncomfortable. It was messy. It was terrifying. And it was like turning on a nuclear reactor inside of me. My creativity came roaring back. My relationships deepened because I was more honest. I felt more whole, more powerful, and more alive than ever before. I didn't destroy the monster in the basement. I realized the monster was my power, caged and starving. I just had to unlock the door. This is the work of Lilith. This is the journey through Gamaliel. It's the understanding that true spiritual growth, true power, isn't about achieving some state of pure, untainted light. It's about the alchemical union, the marriage of your light and your shadow. From this journey, through her myth and her esoteric meaning, we can extract 3 powerful keys to unlock our own true power. Key number 1, the sovereignty of no. In her foundational myth, Lilith's power began with a single word, no. She refused to be subjugated. She refused an identity that was not her own. She chose exile over inauthentic peace. Your no is a sacred act of boundary setting. It is the first step in defining who you are by what you will not accept. Where in your life are you saying yes when your soul is screaming no? In your relationships, your career, to the old beliefs that no longer serve you. Reclaiming your power begins with reclaiming your right to refuse what diminishes you. Your no creates the sacred space for your authentic yes to emerge. Key number 2, the wisdom of the inner wilderness. Lilith's home is the wasteland of Isaiah 34. It's the place of ruin and chaos. In our lives, this is the place of our failures, our heartbreaks, our shame, our dark nights of the soul. We are taught to flee these places, to fix them, to cover them over as quickly as possible. Lilith teaches us to repose there, to find a resting place in the wilderness, because it is in the desolate lands of our own psyche that we find a different kind of wisdom.